All right, today we're going to teach on the fallen angels and the Nephilim. So the narrative in Genesis, as well as we're going to touch base on the first book of Enoch, as well as post-flood. How did the giants return? How did the Nephilim return? So in Genesis 3:15, this is where we're going to start. This is when the Nakash, or the serpent, the deceiver, the diviner, appears. And then, of course, Adam and Eve, they fall. And then God says in Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise thy heel. So here is the first prophecy, and it's basically God showing that the seed of Satan and the seed of the woman is going to clash. And eventually David, he's going to fulfill part of that prophecy. It's a twofold prophecy. He will bruise Goliath's head, which is Satan's champion, the champion of the Philistines. He will bruise him. Then he'll basically run over, take a sword, cut his head off. But then later on, Jesus, he will defeat sin. He'll destroy the works of darkness through, of course, dying on the cross. But in the process of dying on the cross, the enemy will bruise his heel. And so as a result, his hands and his heel are then nailed to the cross. And so it's a twofold prophecy. Now, this is kind of the beginning in Genesis 3:15. In Genesis 6:4, this is when we find out exactly what Satan is going to do. So the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men of old, the men of renown. So remember that the sons of God, this in the original Masoretic text is B'nai Ha Elohim, sons of God. These are angelic creatures, God's creation. Later on, when we cross-reference, actually I'll cross-reference it right now, in Job, okay, we're gonna find out, and also, mainly in Job, we're going to find out the exact same words are used, B'nai Ha Elohim. It's going to say in Job 1:6, we can further kind of interpret this, right? Because the same words are used in a context where you can't interpret it as, oh, those are humans. Undoubtedly in Job, it shows that these are angels. So the first one is Job 1-6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. Job 2-1 also says, on another day, the angels, or the B'nai Ha Elohim, came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them to present himself before him. Then Job 38:7 also says, while the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. God is creating the physical universe. And this is when the angels were created before the physical realm. And so over there, we can see that in the phrasing that's used, these are angels. They're not the sons of Seth or these other interpretations. These are angels. In Jude 6, we also find out that Jude 1:6, and the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness, unto the judgment of the great day. So there were some angels that somehow transgressed, who rebelled, and they're locked up. They're in chains of darkness. So when we go into also Ezra 9:2-3, there's some interesting things as well, because it says, for they have taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy seed has mingled themselves with the people of those lands. Ye, the land of the princes and the rulers, hath been chief in their trespass. And when I heard this thing, I rent my garment and my mantle, and I plucked off the hair of my head and the end of my beard, and sat down astonished. So here we have as well mention of kind of like this concept of the holy seed mingling with corrupted seed, because the offspring of the fallen watchers, the fallen angels that occurred in Genesis 6:4 has, again, brought corruption to the land, pre-flood and post-flood. So pre-flood, we're going to talk about the little bit of book of Enoch. And with the book of Enoch, remember the first book of Enoch is, look at it as a historical book. It is not inspired scripture. It does prescribe some things, that are not biblical. For example, worshiping the cosmological bodies, the sun, stars, the moon, offering sacrifices to them. So you cannot claim that it is biblical, it should be part of the canon, that it's inspired, because it has a number of errors about, of course, certain doctrinal things. However, I think we can glean some knowledge from it. Okay, the book of Enoch 2 and 3, those are more satanic texts where it's outright occult, Kabbalistic kind of stuff, and that is prescribed to the evil Enoch. Now remember, there's actually multiple authors who wrote the books of Enoch. It's not just a single author. The styles changed. There are errors and anachronisms in it that are from different time periods, so it's pieced together, I think, over 300 years from the copies that we have in our catalogs, as well as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, so the book of Enoch, it is not inspired text, but we can look at it as a historical book. There's some truth, there's some falsehoods. However, with the book of Enoch, it does specifically outline some interesting things related to the fallen watchers. And this is also found in many different cultures related to these gods that came down and basically took on wives of mankind and basically bore hybrids, offspring. So right now with in the Enoch 1, okay, the first book of Enoch, chapter 6, it says, "And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days there were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, and the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Semyaza, who is their leader, said to them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to this deed, and I alone shall not pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all swear unto him, and they said, Let us all swear on oath and bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were all 200 who ascended in the days of Jared in the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of the leaders. So there's Semyaza, Azazel, Rakabel, Remiel, Kokabil, Tamiel, Ramiel, Daniel, Ezekiel, Barakiel, Asael, Amaras, Batariel, Anael, Zachiel, Samsapiel, Satariel, Turiel, Jumjael, Sariel, and these are the names of the 10 chiefs. So this translation is a little bit weird, some of the wordings. It's not like our modern day English. But basically from that union, they have these offspring that are basically giants that begin to consume the land and also the inhabitants thereof, because they're basically destroy and they consume everything. They're basically, they're out of control. And what we do know is at the height of the pre-flood world, there was violence that filled the earth and God was grieved, okay? And then what's interesting is in Ezekiel 31, okay, like the vision or the prophecy that's talking about, let's say, Lucifer, the fallen cherub, okay, the bright and morning star, the son of the morning star. In Ezekiel 31, it's talking about a very similar way about an Assyrian, a king, the king of Assyria. But then it begins to talk about a spiritual realm, a spiritual entity, okay? And so we can use the Bible to decode Ezekiel 31, because it talks about how he is his great height. He's like a cedar tree, and cedar trees are used to describe fallen entities, such as fallen angels or the Nephilim, okay? And it talks about how all his bows are stretched out, his branches are stretched out, and all the birds of the field come to nest in his tree, similar to, what was it, in Nebuchadnezzar, where it talks about his tree in the vision, right? But in this case, the Assyrian, it says that he was in the garden of God. Okay, he's an angel, this particular entity. And so he's in the garden of God, and eventually the other angels, they look at him and they are jealous of his kingdom. They're jealous of him. So they team up. Some of them, I believe, team up, and the kingdoms attack him. They go to war, and there's all-out war in the pre-flood world. And it says he is delivered unto the hand, until the might of the heathen. All right, in Ezekiel, and that is actually Satan. He's delivered unto Satan. And of course, you work for Satan, he's going to turn on you eventually. He's going to use you. And so at one point, basically God allows Satan to basically tear up this guy, and Satan causes all these other kingdoms to do war and destroy, or try to destroy this emperor, the pre-flood emperor, who was the mightiest of them all in the pre-flood world. And so it could be Sanyaza or Azazel. I kind of tend to think it could be Azazel because of he was the one who brought mankind the knowledge of weapons and warfare. And I believe he's also connected to Nema, being possibly one of the first pre-flood wives, pre-flood Nephilim, fallen watcher wives, because Tubal-Cain and Tubal-Cain, the line of Lamech, basically his two sons, okay, they are given secret technology. If you kind of read behind the lines, Tubal-Cain is basically the first to work metals, and he makes tools, right? Tools, weapons, these kind of things with it, right? And so wouldn't you be the baddest guy on the block if you knew how to make the weapons, you had the swords and everything? And what's interesting is, so Tubal-Cain, the line of Lamech, he receives that technology. Jabal also receives other knowledge of arts and science, okay? And then it mentions Nema. And specifically, it usually doesn't name women unless they're of significance with the bloodline of the Messiah, or there's some sort of evil or something special about them. And so Nema is mentioned, okay? And so I believe that Nema is probably one of the pre-flood, one of the first wives of the Watchers in the pre-flood world, because they exchanged technologies. This is what the book of Enoch talks about, the exchanged technology and forbidden arts to mankind in exchange for the daughters or the sisters, okay? So possibly this Assyrian, I believe he becomes this emperor, and he rules this entire pre-flood world, or at least with great might, until everyone turns on him. And then there's all out war and violence. And all of the flesh had been corrupted. Mankind had been so corrupted that God says only Noah is pure in his generations, his genetics. That's what it means. However, post-flood, we do find out that there are more giants, but they're a lot smaller. They're a lot different. But pre-flood, this is what happens. This is the cause of the Nephilim, the giants who then became demon spirits post-flood, okay? And then they look for bodies to inhabit, to possess, or to go into, because they want to drink, they want to eat, they want to enjoy all of the debauchery that they did when they had bodies. Now, post-flood, they do return, and then typically in the post-flood, they're now known by the Rephaim and different names, different tribes, many different tribes post-flood.